Some cars don't really need much of an introduction, and the 2025 Mazda Miata is indeed one of them. It's the ND3. They changed a couple things about it last year, and for 2025, there's really nothing new. And, you know, Mazda reached out and said, would you like one of these? And I said, of course, because I'm never going to turn down a week in a Miata, but there's nothing really new to talk about, so let's just go for a drive and talk about why I like this thing. This is just such a great representation of simplicity in cars, and I'm so glad they're still making it, and I wish more cars were like this. And frankly, given the state of the world, the state of the United States, things are a little tumultuous right now, to say the least. Sometimes just having a simple little convertible and some good little back roads is a nice distraction from the rest of everything. Now, before we hit the road, some of you said, wow, can your shorts really get any shorter? And the answer is yes, in fact, they can. For those of you who are more like, come on, legs, you're welcome. Anyway, let's hit the road. So, the Miata. This is the ND3, like I mentioned, and you know, the big news was last year. They revised the rear differential, which was the biggest performance thing they did for it, which really made it less twitchy at the limit and much easier to handle, especially if you had some lift-off moments where it wanted to kind of snap around. And, you know, I'm not looking to have any of those moments today. I want to just drive the car. I'm on some great roads. For those who know this area, this is Great Falls, Virginia. It's really pretty, a lot of expensive homes, and you know, you can't go too fast, which is fine, because this car isn't too fast, and the fact that the car isn't that fast is part of the charm, and the charm is what makes this car so delightful, even at low speeds. It's just pleasant. I had one of these in college, had an NA, my dad has an NC, and these continue to be just the best little simple car for doing kind of whatever and bringing you joy at low speeds. And, you know, I think the world is overwhelming. It's more and more overwhelming by the day. I think, you know, if you watch the news, you might feel more overwhelmed than you need to feel on a daily basis, but you know, things aren't great in some cases, and I think a lot of us could use a little respite from some of the not greatness, and a car like this goes a long way. And you know, for me, I think this comes in a couple parts. So the first part being the notification fatigue, the tech fatigue. So if you know, if you're driving a newer vehicle, everything has more screens, less buttons, more driver assistance, smoother, faster, whatever. And I'm so over screens. You know, it's just constant assaults of information on the senses that I don't think is actually very helpful in a lot of cases. I think we've done tech for tech's sake. And I'm hoping we see a trend kind of away from a lot of that, because the Miata is such a nice refresher of what cars could be and have been, to where it's just, you know, everything you need, nothing you don't. We've got some basic dials for your gauges. We've got like an 8 or 9 inch screen, however big that is. I've never been good at guessing. And a couple dials down here for your climate control and some buttons for your heated seats. That's it. And then a 6-speed manual transmission. What more do you really want or need in a car like this? I've driven plenty of new cars, I've driven plenty of sports cars, and you know, the simplicity is just so fantastic here. I don't need a button on a touchscreen to close the convertible top. Let's just have it designed so I can do it with one hand motion and keep it easy. I don't need a 30-speaker sound system. This is a silly little convertible. Let me have, you know, 9 speakers or whatever they've got in here. Good enough. And then, you know, you've got a delightful drivetrain. This makes 181 horsepower. And I was talking to a friend the other day, and he goes, wow, did Mazda get that thing to 200 horsepower yet? And I said, no, and they don't need to, because it's so light. This is 2366 for curb weight. That is 2,366 pounds. You know what weighs more than that? Every other new car on the market. It's incredible. And what that means is it's just tossable, it's flingable. This engine winds out, you know, 7,000 and change RPM. And I don't want anything faster. And that's the other part of this narrative I've got in my head here. The story I'm telling myself is that cars are too fast. it's so cool what we've been able to do between modern combustion drivetrains and modern EVs. Everything has 1,000 horsepower, and I'm only sort of exaggerating here, right? But like new minivans have 300. A lot of family SUVs, 300, 400 if you go to the performance variants. Go buy any dual motor EV, and they're all what, 500 to 600 if you want the performance ones. Yes, they're heavy, but like, do we need that? The Toyota Supra that I just sold, Toyota says makes 382 horsepower. Whee! That was some gravel. Kudos to all the software and the differential there. That was interesting. Come back to that in a second. Anyway, power. Toyota says my Supra that I just sold makes 382. They dyno at like 400. And that car was a delight on the racetrack. It would do 155 miles an hour. That was super, super fun. On roads like this, I mean, third gear at the top of third was like 94 miles an hour. You could not enjoy it on the street. And what I love here is I'm getting this visceral experience, I'm rowing the gears, I'm having my fun, and I'm doing it all at mostly legal speeds. And when things get a little twisty, the car handles it well, of course. It's super nimble. You saw me get a little squirrely there with that gravel. It rained pretty hard last night, so the roads here are a little slick, plus there's a gravel patch. You know, Mazda's got the handling of this thing dialed TF in. It is just a delight. It's so easy, and when things get like that, it's not scary. You just handle your business, and the car helps you. You know, the differential does its thing. The traction control and stability management do their things. They're all so dialed in. The whole car is just, it's approachable. It's not scary. And, you know, I've shown a lot of other sports cars, performance cars to my parents, to my friends' parents, and a lot of them are like, oh, well, this is cool, but this seems like a lot. And even when you get into just the technology of it all, this seems like a lot, because it is. So, you know, I'm just enamored with the simplicity of this thing, and I hope they don't screw it up for the next round. That was flat through first and second and most of third to get to 60 miles an hour. You know? And I'm having fun doing 30 to 60 miles an hour. And that's that. Now, the other part of all this is that I live in a very walkable city. I don't need a car day to day. It's part of why I sold the Supra. And when I do take out a car, a lot of times I'm purposely taking something out for the sake of evaluating it, putting some miles on it, you know, really figuring out what it's like to live with. And I take it out because it's my job. If I didn't need to take a car out, I would just walk everywhere. So, you know, do I need to drive to the gym? No, I've got my Chevrolet. If it's a nice day, I can just walk. But, you know, I'm doing it because this is my job, is to put miles on these cars, evaluate them, and then eventually make some silly video for YouTube. But, you know, point being, if I don't need to take a car out, I don't have to. And I don't especially look for reasons to take cars out when I am done with my evaluation type driving. This car makes me think of reasons to go for a drive. And there are very few cars in this world that make me do that. You know what I need to get today from the store? Conditioner and shaving cream. And I could go walk to a CVS and go get that. Or I could get in the Miata, throw the top down, put some good music on, and go rag on this car for 20, 25, 30 minutes and go to a CVS way out of town and go get what I need. And that's the spirit of the Miata. And that's what the Miata has always been. And it's just so refreshing. Despite the car not being new, you know, no updates for 2025, okay. When they called me and said, hey, we can put one of these on your schedule, do you want to drive it? I said, absolutely, because I always want to drive a Miata. but I really struggled for what to talk about. And, you know, I think the charm of it is the whole story. I really struggle. I think there are a few other cars that feel light and tossable, and, you know, I would think like GR86 and BRZ, but those aren't convertibles. Lotus Emira, very fun, also not a convertible. Porsche Boxster, fun and convertible. Z4, fun, kind of heavy feeling. But, you know, we don't have a lot of nimble sports cars on the market. A lot of them are sledgehammers. I mean, even a modern 911 is a sledgehammer. A modern Cayman or Boxster is a little more scalpel. The Emira, scalpel. A lot of them are very unobtainable. They're very expensive. Even a Z4 or a Supra or a Nissan Z, expensive for a lot of people. This car, you know, this is a loaded club. This is 39 grand, which I think is a little expensive, but keeping up with, you know, modern car pricing, it's not so bad. And then you've got the BRZ and the 86, which are attainable and not convertibles. But, you know, we don't have a lot of cars on the market like this. And the problem is that when the economy is not doing great, people will not buy cars like this, because unless you are really committed to the bit of owning and driving a 2-seat rear-drive sports car with minimal storage, this doesn't work as your only car. You know, if you're single, sure. If you are partnered up, and doubly so if you have kids, this isn't gonna work. So what happens is we see people getting one car to do it all. Thus the rise of the crossover, thus the rise of the performance crossover, because again, it can do everything, and, you know, you can carry the dog, the partner, the kids, the groceries, the, you know, grandparents, whatever. This is a selfish car. So, you know, this makes me kind of miss the 90s, and, you know, I was a kid in the 90s, but still, I know what cars were around because I was a nerd. You know, cars like even the Chevy Cavalier convertible. That was a terrible car, but it was fun and flirty because the top went down and you could get it with a stick shift, and it was just like, you could do stuff like this in it, and, you know, okay, fine. Was the chassis good? No, it was actively not. But you could get that. A Chrysler Sebring, again, not a great chassis, not a performance car, but it was fun. I think the worst convertible makes the day better than the best sports car if you just need to get out and touch some asphalt. And I wish we had more of these that were not reserved for people making really, really good money, because I think everyone deserves to have a car like this. And, you know, look back in the 90s, we had all sorts of little convertibles that were fun, flirty, tossable, not necessarily sporty all the time, but didn't have to be. And so really, I think my admiration for this car comes down to three big factors. A, the simplicity. B, the sportiness. And then C, the fact that it's a convertible. It is raining right now, and I have the roof down. And I think even with a lot of other convertibles, I'd be like, oh, well, I'll put the top up. You know, it's got like a really nice insulated roof, and Mazda does have a nice insulated roof here. I'm not saying it's like the vinyl of the old cars, but there is a spirit to driving this car that makes you want to have the top down 24/7 and just deep. And when you go, I'm going 40-something miles an hour right now, you don't even get wet inside. It's really not a big deal. But it's also not raining very hard. Either way, there's a charm to this, and I think the convertibleness is a really big part of it. On top of the fact that it's super lightweight, it's super nimble, it's super flingable, it's really fun, it's really revvy. That's all great. And then you add in the fact that the top comes off. And part of what I didn't like about my Supra was that it wasn't a convertible. So this has been nice to just hop right in and reaffirm the fact that convertibles make everything better. So with all that, those are my kind of unplanned, unrehearsed, unscripted, all over the map thoughts on the 2025 Miata. This is a club, by the way. I didn't say anything about that. It's got the Brembos and the BBS wheels, and this is a club. It's got the Brembos and the BBS wheels and the car seats, and that's all lovely. Doesn't impact your day-to-day driving, but it's great if you're, you know, autocrossing it or hitting the track. Yeah, thanks for coming along. I know things are kind of weird right now and difficult for a lot of people, and, you know, that looks different to all of us, but take some time, go get in your your car, go call a friend, go touch some asphalt, find some good roads. It's probably good for everyone. If you have a convertible, so much better. If you don't, probably still all right. In any case, thanks for watching. Like, share, comment, subscribe, all that stuff here. Follow us on socials. Join us for some of our events. Join our membership program. We'd love to have you. And stay safe, be well. See you again soon.